your position on appraisal process? You can start in Texas, or when do we need appraisals, and do they contribute to the problems or the real solution to the problems in claims process?
Like a lot of things, it started off as a good idea. However, what we've seen, and if anybody's read the book, Who Moved the Cheese, as soon as we on my side, those who dress up in suits, get on top of particular positions or aggressions by the insurance company, they tend to move and change things up. So for appraisals, it sounds great. And you know what? When they first started putting it in insurance policies, it was 2 paragraphs. If you and we disagree, you'll get a person, we'll get a person, they'll come together, they'll get a third, and we'll figure out the amount of loss. However, insurance companies started using them as a weapon. All right, we're going to hold out, we're going to deny, we're going to piecemeal, and at first, we're not going to provide coverage at all. Then a contractor or a PA gets involved, we're going to cover one room to the inside, we're not even going to look at the roof. After they get involved, okay, we're up to maybe $8,000 worth of damage. Lawyer has to sue to get the insurance company's attention. Now, we get litigation costs, and 1.5 years after discovery, the insurance company doesn't like the way that the discovery is going, so they invoke the appraisal process. After the appraisal process is completed, they pay the ACV minus the deductible, and a couple birds come out, and they tell the insured to go take a hike. Luckily, we've gotten past that on one of my cases, Hinojos versus State Farm, where we were kicked out of County Court Law number 6 in El Paso in that exact situation. And we said, this is not right. This doesn't make sense when the economics go completely upside down. So we took it to this Texas Supreme Court. Now, if we didn't win that, which by the way we did, insurance policies in Texas would basically be worthless. Sorry, I'm out of time.
So the first reported decision in the state of Texas on appraisal was a Texas Supreme Court case in 1886. And the language was pretty much the same as Chad said for over 100 years. And the process worked. For the next 110, 20 years, there was only 27, I believe, reported decisions talking about the appraisal process, where matters actually got disputed, ended up in courts. So appraisal worked for a really long time. But then people realized on the policyholder side that appraisal was an easy way to go get a claim paid because there's no judges, there's no ethical rules, there's no guidelines. I can go in and manipulate the process by not telling the insurance company about the process, or not telling them we're going to go get a buddy judge to appoint an umpire, or we're going to inflate the numbers so highly that the umpire just splits the baby and we make a bunch of money. So there is rank abuse of the appraisal process now. But my perspective is that it's mostly on the policyholder side, because we have people who have come into the process and realize that they can game the system for their own financial gain. The 2 fraud cases I filed were both in appraisals. One of them in litigation. Right, Chad's example about people invoking appraisal late in litigation, I agree it's wrong. If you want to go to appraisal, go before you file suit. But in the case that I had, where I sued the building owner, the appraiser, and the umpire for fraud, the policyholder attorney invoked appraisal on the eve of trial. And I agree that's wrong. So we can fix appraisal if we work together to bring it back to, as Steve Patrick says, a level playing field.
The other issue to that is appraisal costs both sides money. And if the insurance company failed to perform a reasonable inspection in the first place, then why in the hell does the insured have to fork out a couple grand and pay half the cost to get a reasonable inspection done? Because that's basically what an appraisal is.
Yeah, and I would say if some PA comes in and inflates the crap out of the claim, just to try to make extra money. Why should my client have to pay half the cost? So the abuses on both sides drive the dialogue. I agree that's the problem. I also agree that it is cost prohibitive on smaller claims where Mrs. Smith can afford an appraiser and an umpire. And that's why I worked with the Texas legislature a couple of times to try to come up with a statutory appraisal process where the insurance industry agrees to pay for the entire process, and the homeowner doesn't have to, in exchange for some protections to us, and the policyholder attorney bar killed it.
I disagree that it's mostly on the policyholder side. We go from two paragraphs to farmers, and I remember it was a contractor said, "Hey, Chad, have you seen the new appraisal clause from farmers?" I'm like, "No." Well, and then he described it to me. I'm like, "Send me that." And sure as all get out, 14 pages. We've gone from 2 paragraphs to 14 pages, and all of a sudden, instead of the 2 appraisers agreeing on an umpire, all of a sudden the policyholder has to get or agree to, actually, they're not agreeing to anything, it's in the policy. We have a selection of umpires with the AAA, the American Arbitration Association, but don't you worry about their fee. We're going to take care of the fee. How in the world? It baffles me how insurance companies can put garbage like that in a policyholder and still say it's fair. Everybody with a brain can figure out where that's going to go, and it's going to be bad for the policyholder.
So you've just impugned the entire AAA, saying every AAA arbitrator is a fraud in favor of insurance companies, and that's just wrong.
Only those that are listed as umpires.
And again, appraisal worked for 120 years with those 2 paragraphs. The insurance industry does not sit around wanting to change forms. They change forms in response to abuses. Look at all the new forms you're dealing with. Every single one of them is a result of an abuse. Number 1, cosmetic damage endorsements. It's because people started filing claims with tiny little dents that for 100 years nobody cared about because no one could see them. But hey, let's call it physical loss or damage. So now we have that. Same with appraisal. Same with ACV endorsements. It's all a reaction to the abuses that we're facing.